Thanks everybody for coming. For those of you who are veterans of our news conferences here, we're pretty casual. We're going to all yield to each other. We're going to stay with about 5 minutes, and then you can give me on any softball questions and give hard ones to the rest of the delegation. For years, especially during the presidential campaign, Donald Trump argued that the immigration debate was about going after terrorists. It was about going after drug cartels. It was going after violent criminals. Few would object to something like that. In reality, Trump's ICE has been focused on sweeping up innocent immigrants like Roberto Hernandez, who was picked up while he was fighting a wildfire and Mr. Hernandez was protecting all of us. Yesterday, my colleagues and I sought out ICE officials in Southwest Portland to see how their policies were actually working on the ground. That was the point of it, is we wanted to see how the system worked. Congresswoman Hoyle visited the facility in Eugene. Congresswoman Salinas has been out at facilities like the Portland one. So you've got the whole delegation basically up on the issues that we're going to talk about. And for me, the big questions were about due process. And I was alarmed to hear that the ICE agents in Portland think they have the authority to block attorneys from accessing their clients. Immigrants who have been picked up aren't being allowed to even see their attorneys. And immigrants who need a lawyer aren't being allowed to meet with attorneys to get representation. In case you were wondering what this is all about, the things we were looking at, they are required by the national detention standards, and they aren't doing it here in Portland, Oregon. Second, we were concerned about the question of the online detainee locator. This is so attorneys can and family members can know where folks are being held. They told us that it was up and going, and that's not true. We confirmed it later on. So item number 2, what we thought was important in terms of making sure that we had this detainee locator so that attorneys and families could be in touch, not true either. Third, we asked about masks. And I'm leading the effort in the Senate. My colleagues have a big effort in the House. And the point really is, in an autocracy, you hide. You're afraid of being visible to people. In a democracy, you're not. So we tried to ask them what the policy was for taking the masks off and being transparent and accountable. And we're very concerned that there really isn't a requirement, but somehow there is a policy, and it tilts towards, again, the kind of secrecy and the lack of accountability that isn't right. And finally, I wanted to say what I think is the central point of what we saw yesterday. Over and over again, when we were trying to get concrete answers about attorney access, masking policies, details about specific cases, we were told by the ICE officials here, not far from here, that this was federal policy. This wasn't their beat. This was a federal, policy. And I think it would be fair to say, at this point, we want to know who in hell is making the rules. Because it was very clear yesterday after they said again and again, oh, that's something going on in Washington, D.C. We're not going to be involved in that. We couldn't get any answers. So this is a big, big departure from what Americans were told in 2024. Mr. Hernandez, and I've talked with him now repeatedly, he did every single thing right that we expect of someone. And he did it at a crucial time when we desperately needed firefighters. And yet, he was the face of what this policy was all about. Somebody who was working hard, making a difference, and I thought it was particularly unfortunate. Last point I would make is they constantly said, well, we'll have to be in touch with you and we'll try to help. Well, Senator Merkley and I have been trying daily for days now to get the acting director of ICE on the phone so that if we can't get answers in our hometown, at least Oregon's United States senators can get answers over the phone, and they still haven't gotten back to us. So that's where we are in terms of yesterday and on the key questions of due process, which is what the American legal system is all about. What we heard about yesterday falls short of the principle that you can protect people's rights and still have a system that ensures the safety of our communities. They're not mutually exclusive. But we didn't see that yesterday. Senator Merkley, I think, where's Senator Merkley? My partner.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator Wyden. And I want to start just by acknowledging that our hearts go out to the families who were affected by the shooting at the ICE facility in Dallas, to the staff members of ICE who were terrified by that event. There is no place for violence in America. We live in a nation where our freedom of speech and our freedom of assembly are based on the understanding that we resolve our issues through dialogue, through debate, through the ballot box, and then by advocating with those who are elected. Violence has no place in our nation, and it has to end. It has come from both sides, extremes, and it absolutely requires all of us to stand up and say, hell no, not here in the United States of America. Trump is using ICE to sow fear and chaos. He claimed his strategy was to arrest and deport undocumented immigrants who are committing violent crimes. Now, that's a mission I think we can all support. It's certainly a mission I support. But what are we actually seeing? We're seeing masked ICE agents grabbing immigrants off the street. We are seeing ICE agents stalking parents dropping off their kids at daycare and at school. We are seeing ICE agents arresting a mother of 4 U.S. citizen children for hugging her sister in Peace Arch Park, which is designed for that purpose between Washington State and Canada. We have seen agents using expedited removal, a strategy that was previously limited to within a certain miles of the border and about a 2-week period, being used across the country to arrest and depart individuals who have absolutely no criminal record at all. We are seeing, as President Wyden emphasized, an Oregon firefighter arrested while fighting a wildfire across the Columbia River in Washington State. Under Trump 1, I introduced the Preventing Authoritarian Policing Tactics in America's Streets Act after a whole set of police or federal security agents from different agencies were sent to Portland, and they were not wearing any kind of ID. You had no idea where they came from, who they represented. I talked to some folks who said, we don't know when we saw somebody grabbed and thrown into a van if they were being grabbed by kidnappers, because there was no ID on the van and there was no ID on the people grabbing them. That bill requires law enforcement to display ID. It bans the use of unmarked vehicles unless they're being used in a legitimate undercover operation. And it requires reports on what police agencies, security agencies, are being delegated into what actions. And that bill is a bill that Senator Wyden has joined in, Congresswoman Bonamici is leading it in the House of Representatives. And it is the difference between a nation where the police are accountable to the people for their behavior, and they have at least a number, and what agency they're part of. So if they misbehave, there is that ability to hold them accountable, and police that are not accountable. Unmarked police, unmarked vans is a symbol of a fascist state. It doesn't belong here in the United States of America. We have demanded answers from ICE and the Department of Homeland Security about the disappearing detainees from Alligator Alcatraz. Whole bunch of folks that people have no idea what's happened to them. And members of the delegation have joined in that, I think now 63 members of Congress in that demand. We have sent a letter to say that DHS should not be holding pregnant or postpartum or nursing mothers. This indefinite detention. This is not just some possibility. And by the way, I want to mention that the individual I'm about to mention and Jackie Merlos, that Congresswoman Maxine Dexter has been doing a hell of a job leading the effort on these cases, constituents that she has really led the advocacy for. But here we have a pregnant mother, the mother also of a 2-year-old, being held on suspicion of shoplifting. Back when Laken Riley was being considered in the Senate, I said, this is going to be used to deport people who are simply suspected by the government. She has never been charged, and she's being held. And by the way, Jackie Merlos has never been charged either, the mother of the 4 children who was arrested for hugging her sister from Canada in Peace Arch Park on the border. So we are making the case that Trump, far from pursuing a policy designed to arrest and deport undocumented individuals who create violent acts, is instead sowing chaos and fear across America and using tactics that violate the basic norms of our constitutional republic. That is absolutely unacceptable. You know, the Oregonian reports that its staff witnessed outside of the IF's office where we were yesterday, witnessed the security officers attacking peaceful protesters. And I thought this was pretty significant for a major newspaper. They weren't saying someone alleged it. They weren't saying that we had claimed it, or they weren't saying that they quoted a protest. They were saying their staff had witnessed these agents. So I raised it yesterday in our meeting. And we were informed by Karina, no, that's not her right name. Anyway, the woman who runs the office in Seattle that covers 3 states for ICE, the field offices, that, well, those are not our ICE agents on the street. Those are Federal Protective Services. And so we said, well, you have the building. Shouldn't you be weighing in and saying that there is a red line in which you never attack peaceful protesters? We have here in the United States a Constitution. That Constitution envisions freedom of assembly. It envisions freedom of speech. It envisions that peaceful protest is a hallmark of a republic of, by, and for the people. And that red line should never be crossed. I hope she will, in fact, emphasize that, because that is another piece of sowing fear and chaos. And right now we are hearing in this interview that President Trump did with his vice president that they are planning to target Portland. Now, I look out, we don't see rioters raging through these streets. We didn't see any angry protesters outside of ICE when we were there yesterday. But this strategy of enabling unmarked police and security officers who are attacking peaceful protesters and ramping up this rhetoric is all about creating more violence and then using that violence to justify even more security. This is a cycle we do not want to see happen in the United States, and certainly the president should be doing the reverse, working to create a peaceful, prosperous future rather than incite violence in cities across America. You know, Vice President Vance said, people in black masks are committing violence against the people. When I heard that quote, he could have been talking about the Federal Protective Services assaulting the peaceful protesters right here in Oregon. Thank you. And it's my get to turn it over to Congresswoman Bonamici.
Thank you to the senators and to my colleagues from the House. I also condemn violence. I condemn violence at the ICE facility in Dallas. I condemn violence at the college campus in Utah. I condemn violence at the home of a legislator in Minnesota, and I condemn the violence being committed right now in city after city and in state after state, in story after story, and video after video by ICE agents. Yesterday we visited the ICE McAdam facility, and as the senators explained, we asked many questions. We asked about the enforcement tactics, we asked about access to counsel, we asked about access to health care, we asked how they decide who they target and why they make those decisions. And I will tell you that I am not at all satisfied with the answers and the evasion that we got. There was some information that conflicted with other information. There was evasion about the reasons why people were targeted and detained. And so, needless to say, many concerns remain. ICE has said they're targeting people for arrest and detainment who have committed crimes. That's what they told us. But that's not what we are seeing. In fact, the Cato Institute reported over the summer that 65% of the people they have taken into custody had no criminal convictions, and even with those with convictions, more than half of them were for immigration, traffic, or nonviolent offenses. This is not what the administration said they were going to focus on. And the current ICE enforcement tactics, they actually make the entire community less safe. They're creating a calculated culture of fear. And just yesterday, as Senator Merkley mentioned, the headline in the Oregonian said this: federal cops instigating confrontations outside ICE building, Portland police official says in court. Even the Portland police is raising concerns about what is happening here in Portland with the excessive use of force. This is unacceptable and certainly not what people want or expect. You know what else is unacceptable? Many, if not most, ICE agents are masked, as you heard, and unidentifiable when they go out into the community. That's a secret police tactic straight out of authoritarian regimes. That is not what we see in a democracy. It's incredibly dangerous. It erodes public trust. The officers escape accountability for their actions, and dangerously, very dangerously, they set the stage for impersonators to kidnap people, and that is happening. And here's what's also unacceptable. ICE officers breaking car windows to grab Oregonians and detain them, abducting parents in front of their children's school, taking wildland firefighters on duty, keeping young U.S. citizens separated from their parents, repealing the guidance that kept ICE out of sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, and places of worship. Kids and families are scared. I had a fourth grader in Hillsborough tell me she's afraid for her classmates. She's afraid they'll come and take her classmates, or her classmates will get home and their parents won't be there. Parents are afraid to gather, go to work, to worship, or to the grocery store or medical appointments. That is all unacceptable. Immigrants are our friends, our neighbors, our teachers, our coworkers. This is an out-of-control federal agency that the Trump administration is weaponizing for political points, not for safety, and we will not stand for it. And I want to add that if Donald Trump really cared about safety, he would not have released 1,600 criminal defendants from federal prison on his first day in office. And now it's my honor to welcome my colleague, Representative Andrea Salinas.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you to my colleagues. It is more important, and you will hear some repetition, but it is more important ever that we as members of Congress exercise our oversight duties as this administration continues to ruthlessly attack our community members and ignore the rule of law. And so it was just a few weeks ago that I toured the Portland ICE field office, and it sounds like I had a very similar experience to what my colleagues just experienced. My visit reinforced what I knew to be true. The Trump administration is intentionally creating chaos and sowing confusion around immigration enforcement to seize power and flout the rule of law. And this is how we devolve into authoritarianism. During the visit, I pressed ICE officials regarding the concerns I continue to hear from our community that ICE officials are operating with a complete disregard for due process. And I was fortunate. I was able to bring in an attorney that was representative of some of the detainees. And initially, ICE claimed they weren't denying detainees their constitutionally afforded rights. But the immigration attorney who joined me recounted multiple examples where she was repeatedly denied access to her client despite having the required paperwork. And when she presented ICE with the actual truth, ICE admitted that this was unlawful and committed to honoring due process in front of me. And I asked, so you are going to actually uphold the rule of law? And they committed this to me. And so I intend to hold them to that commitment that they made in front of the attorney, in front of my staff, and in front of a member of Congress. But no one should be denied their constitutional right to an attorney. But more importantly, the Trump administration cannot deny constitutional rights and then lie about it just to meet their inhumane and arbitrary immigration quotas. And as I said before, that's how we slip into authoritarianism. When I was a state legislator, I worked to pass, with some of my colleagues here, to pass universal representation, which would ensure immigrants in Oregon could potentially have access to legal counsel, so they would not face deportation hearings alone. Now, as a member of Congress, I cannot sit back when the right to even call an attorney is being purposely withheld from immigrants detained by ICE. My visit also confirmed that the Trump administration is not limiting enforcement to criminals and gang members, as they claim. And as we've heard, there's no clear standard for who is being targeted. And when asked and pressed, ICE officials could not offer the rationale or methodology for who they are prioritizing. Which detainees are you going after? Who is giving you this list? They kept blaming it. Oh, that's above my pay grade. That goes back to the White House. Who in the White House? They could not tell us. But this is not about public safety. This is not about what President Trump ran on. This approach, though, it spreads fear, it tears families apart, and it undermines trust in our communities. And I have seen this in my own district. One of my constituents, who's been mentioned here, owned a respected vineyard management company, and his sudden detention by ICE broke up his family. He'd been here for over 30 years and sent shockwaves through Oregon's wine industry. We saw a father taken into custody outside his child's preschool in front of his own child, sowing fear and confusion among other children and parents. And then most recently, the wildland firefighter from Kaiser who was detained while fighting fires up in the Olympic National Forest. And during his arrest, my constituent was denied due process by ICE and denied access to his attorney. His family and attorney were unable to locate him for over 48 hours. And as always, this always happens on a Friday when we can't get in touch with anybody, when suddenly the phone lines shut down at ICE. Nobody in Tacoma can be contacted. Nobody here can be contacted. This is beyond unconstitutional. They're targeting people intentionally. They're targeting the timing intentionally. This is all intentional chaos, as Senator Merkley continues to say. But I am happy to share good news that earlier this week, he was released from ICE custody. But this goes to show that the administration knows that what it is doing is simply wrong. But it should not take the involvement and the direct intervention of a member of Congress, of all of these members of Congress, to prevent even just a small modicum of transparency. Yet, if that is what it's going to take, I will be here every step of the way, questioning, with oversight, with more questions, to make sure that the constitutional rights of my constituents and of Oregonians are met. They deserve answers from all of us. All Americans do. So I am completely proud to stand here with this amazing group of members of Congress. And we will continue to work in Congress for reforms that are fair, humane, and transparent, so families can live without fear and communities here in Oregon can thrive. And now I will hand it over to my dear colleague from Oregon's 3rd District, Maxine Dexter.
So thank you so much, and indeed, it is an honor to serve with this delegation. We have stood in solidarity fighting for immigration accountability and transparency, and I am excited to be able to share the stage with them today. Yesterday, we did indeed visit the ICE facility on McAdam as part of our congressional oversight responsibilities. And as you've heard, we have not received the answers that we believe we deserve. We know our community is strongest when families feel safe, when people can go to work, can go to school, can go to worship, and not have fear. But right now, ICE is actively eroding trust across Portland. And the reason is painfully clear. Cruelty is not a side effect of Trump's immigration system. It is the point. It is deliberate, and it is dangerous. As a physician who's cared for the sickest members of our community, I am particularly concerned about the lack of medical care being provided by those caught up in this cruel system. The denial of basic, necessary medical attention is one of the most dehumanizing tools used in immigration enforcement today. This week, we saw that cruelty in action. Rafael Arreola Caballero, a Portland resident, was violently detained by ICE agents while reportedly recovering from recent elbow surgery. ICE officers, despite knowledge of his injury, used excessive force to pull him out of his vehicle, smashing his car window, cutting him, and then pulling him out and forcing his injured elbow behind his back. Even after my office made an inquiry to ensure Rafael was receiving appropriate medical care and afforded due process, ICE deported him. He is now separated from his family. He has 6 children, and to our knowledge, still has not received the care he urgently needs. Another constituent of mine, Annalise, is currently in ICE custody while pregnant. As you heard from Senator Merkley, she's not been charged with any crime. Since the beginning of her detention, she has lost a concerning amount of weight and is not receiving the level of prenatal care that every expecting mother deserves, regardless of immigration status. These are not isolated cases. This week, we learned that a 16th person died while in ICE custody in the U.S. 16 people. These are human beings who died under the care and custody of the United States government. The federal government has both a legal and a moral obligation to ensure the safety and health of people in its custody. But instead, we are witnessing a disturbing and preventable pattern of suffering, medical neglect, and death. This is not law enforcement. It is calculated cruelty. It's part of a deliberate campaign to dehumanize immigrants and desensitize us all to what's happening. That's why I'm calling on every member of our community to stay loud in speaking out peacefully against this cruelty. Stay engaged. Speak out when you see injustice. Our collective voices are powerful, and they are necessary to stop this inhumane system from operating in the shadows. Courage is contagious. Please show it. And I want to take a moment to thank the members of the Free Press who are here today. Your work brings transparency, brings accountability, and brings us together. Authoritarian abuses thrive in silence and secrecy, but we will not let that happen, and we're in this together. Together, we will keep fighting for justice, for dignity, and for the kind of country we know we can be. And with that, I hand back over to Senator Wyden. Thank you.
Great, and no more speechifying from me. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to be available now for questions from the press for all the members, and then we've got some terrific advocates Where's Isa from the Innovation Law Lab? Oh, great. Isa, okay. Jessica, Alyssa, and Lenny, all in the house? All right. And I just want to, because my colleagues all made the point about our opposition to violence, come back to this message. This is not an either-or proposition. You can have due process so that we wouldn't see the flagrant violations that we all saw yesterday. And at the same time, you can have safety for the community. They're not mutually exclusive. You can have both. And my colleagues over the last 45 minutes or so showed you very well how to do it. Okay, questions?
Can you give us an idea of how much ICE detentions have increased in Oregon?
Well, I'll give you my firsthand data-driven proposition from this morning. We drove by and there was nobody there.
At the ICE facility, as in nobody was detained?
Nobody was outside. What was the question?
Can you give us an idea of
Do we have a number for beds?
I can jump in if
Great,
helpful.
go.
We don't have an exact number of detentions. We have seen an increase in detentions. I think prior to this administration, we were seeing a few a month. I think now we're seeing anywhere between 2 to 5 every day.
and this is in Oregon?
This is in Oregon, yes.
I just want to add, there was nobody there when we were there yesterday, and I think they said about 70 per month come through. They don't keep them long in Oregon because we don't have a place where they can stay. Well, they're supposed to stay only 12 hours, and of course there's questions about that, violating that. But there wasn't anybody there yesterday.
The reason I said nobody there is because that's relevant to Donald Trump saying that the streets of Portland are always up in arms and people are fighting and protesting and the like. This morning, there was nobody there.
Mr. Wynn, the President has said several times that there will be federal intervention in Portland, for Antifa and terrorist lists and so forth. So I think you and others have mentioned have said that your position is that that's not something that's necessary here, but taking the President at his word, what is the plan for when that?
I'll let all my colleagues get into this. First of all, it's important to recognize that the President's argument is a fable. It does not resemble the truth. Last night I was asked about it, and I said to everybody, it's 71 degrees out in Portland today. If we left this TV station, we could go into many neighborhoods where people are outside, they're enjoying what they're doing, they're enjoying their neighbors, they might be having a barbecue, they might be getting back from work. This is not a town that is up in arms about this Trump assertion that we are violent. Quite the contrary. What I saw last night, and I offered everybody to come join and see it as we walked out of the TV station, was a community that is safe, is committed to working together. And by the way, the Trump people don't want to see that because I offered to Mr. Homan to come join one of our town meetings, and he didn't even want to show up. What else do you want to know?
Well, the question was regarding, so I understand what you're saying, but what is the plan, what are the conversations about when that happens, taking the President at his word that there will be additional federal intervention?
Well, first of all, I'm not saying it's a done deal. He said it multiple times. We could go back and say he said it again and again. If he watches a TV show in the morning and he sees Portland mentioned, he says it's a terrible place. We will be prepared, and we will be prepared to show again that due process rights and community safety can go hand in hand. That's what we have tried to do with yesterday. I mean, we didn't go there looking for a fight and an argument. We went there because we wanted to understand the structure of the agency so that we'll be in a position to make the point that if we all work together for safety, we have much less likelihood of dangerous confrontations. Anybody come on in.
Happy to. Hi, Jessica Maravilla with the ACLU of Oregon. Following on Congressman's remarks, deploying military force in our communities to enforce immigration laws or suppress dissent is an unacceptable overreach. It is an abuse of power that threatens everyone's civil liberties, regardless of status of political views, gender identity, your race, whatever it may be. And anyone exercising the First Amendment rights to criticize the government have been heavily targeted by the Trump administration, and that's where a lot of the fallacies that we're seeing. So we're watching closely, and we'll take action if the National Guard is used to target communities or to suppress lawful dissent. For now, we're working with all of our levels of government to make sure that our National Guard is doing what it's supposed to do, which is supposed to keep our communities protected and safe from wildfires and the natural things that just happen in our states. And so that coordination is continuing to happen.
I will just add that we learned a lot from the first Trump administration when he did send troops to Portland, and we know that it did not make the community safer. It's like pouring fuel on the flames and the fire. And so I know that our advocacy groups, our offices, the Portland Police, the law enforcement are all ready in case this happens. I also highly condemn the use of military forces in our cities. We've been back to D.C. since they had troops wandering around, and it's absolutely absurd because they have D.C. police and Capitol Police, and you have this military just wandering the streets. It's absurd, and it's not what the military is for. And I also want to point out that this proclaimed war on Antifa is completely a fallacy. Antifa is an ideology. It is not a group. And so we're extremely concerned about what he's going to try to do with that pronouncement. But I know that the advocates all be ready for that and to fight that because we don't want our communities to be taken over by military. That does not make us safer. And I will reiterate, Donald Trump does not care about safety. If he cared about safety, he would not have released 1,600 convicted insurrectionists into the streets. He cares about control and authoritarianism, and that is his mission. He doesn't care about safety. We care about safety. That's why we're here to say we are going to do everything we can to keep our communities safe and hopefully keep sending the message that Portland does not need the military. We do not want them. We do not need them. We do not welcome them to come here under his orders.
Everybody will get at least one question. Gentleman in pink.
You briefly touched on detentions. ICE operations are under the microscope right now, but can any of you share hard numbers about how everything that we're seeing compares to years past, administrations past, whether that's detentions, ICE raids, deportations, and how does the hard numbers of how it compares?
My name is Alyssa Walker-Keller, and I am the coordinator at the Portland Immigrant Rights Coalition. Our hotline receives phone calls from community members who suspect that they see ICE in their community or to report detentions as well as to request other resources. I will say that in previous years, we would see approximately 50 phone calls a month. We're seeing 700 phone calls a month, and it's a statewide hotline number. Yeah, no problem. Additionally, we're seeing, this was good information that was shared with us, that they're seeing 70 detentions move through the McAdam facility a month because we're receiving approximately 30 to 40 detentions reported on our hotline for the last several months. And so just those are self-reported information, coming from the community members themselves, the school staff who are, accompanying families through this trauma, family members who maybe don't know where their loved one is. And so while it is not the exact number, we're seeing a standard of deviation that's really significantly increasing.
I think she wants to ask more on the same question.
There's concern that the images President Trump is seeing are actually from 2020 and not today.
Yes.
My question is for the elected officials. What are you guys doing to clear up that communication issue?
I will just say, I wish I had taken some video footage of the peaceful protesters I saw 3 weeks ago. There were about 2, maybe 3 women over the age of 65 or 70. They were the furthest thing that I would describe as Antifa. This is Trump making up stuff. And to your point, it is completely ridiculous. And I don't know if he is, it's giving him too much credit to say that he is seeing footage from 2020, he is using footage to complete his narrative. That is what he's doing. But what we are seeing right now is the furthest thing from this narrative that he has out there and this story that he is trying to put out into the, the American public. It's so wrong. I don't have photos from that. Hopefully my colleagues do.
They're cowards. That's why I invited the top man for one of my open to all town hall meetings. I said, this is your time. You're saying all these things are happening. This is such a dangerous place. Come and talk to our community. No show. In fact, not only was he a no-show, he just zipped through the community and wouldn't talk to all of you.
And I want to emphasize a point. Your question presumes that Trump is trying to make a rational point based on evidence. And of course, that is not correct. He is not. He is trying to project an image to justify forces that he can roll in to create chaos and then justify further authoritarian actions. Right now, generals from across the world are traveling to Washington, D.C. in order to have an unprecedented conversation with the Secretary of Defense. At the same time, we are on the verge of a government shutdown. We don't know, because nobody in the administration has said, why this unprecedented summoning of generals. You can look at event after event after event that is all about increasing authoritarian control. Attacks on the press, attacks on freedom of speech, attacks on the university, holding law firms hostage, kicking a comedian, using the FCC to kick a comedian off TV. I was very struck by what Jimmy Kimmel said, that in our nation, no government agency should ever strive to kick someone off TV because the president disagrees with what they're saying. That is a totalitarian nation. That is not the United States of America. And then his follow-up was to say, what makes America great is that we can have shows where we disagree with the president. You can have comedians who make fun of the president. You can have members of Congress doing what we are doing here today and saying that we disagree with what the president is doing. And we are ringing the alarm bells about authoritarian action. A second piece of your question was about communication with the administration. Senator Wyden pointed out that we have been lobbying for a phone call with the head of ICE. We've been making request after request, and we keep hearing, we're looking into it. 2 U.S. senators cannot get a conversation with the head of ICE about actions that are taking place, including the detention of a mother of 4 American citizen children, 3 triplets, I think they're age 7, another daughter, age 9, and no charges filed against her. She hugged her sister from Canada in the Peace Arch Park. No charge filed, just an accusation that somehow she was thinking about possibly smuggling her sister into the United States. And in fact, the family had had the exact same type of reunion in Peace Arch Park previously. And you depart that park through the exit that takes you back to the country you came from. I mean, the place is set up for that. So here is this incredibly outrageous situation where for 91 days, this mother has been separated from her 4 children, and we cannot, 2 U.S. senators cannot get a conversation with the head of ICE to say, this is wrong. You filed no charges. You're detaining a woman whose children need her. What the hell is going on? We can't even get that conversation.
Let's take maybe one more, and then we're going to have to zip. We didn't get one. Heather.
Quick question with a follow-up. Was the visit to the ICE facility yesterday by appointment, or did you just show up and they let you in?
It was arranged by Congresswoman Bonamici.
It was appointment.
There is a large immigrant community in Eastern Oregon, obviously a member of the delegation not here. Have the senators heard of any detainees coming from east of the Cascades from Congressman Ben's district, are we having the same conversation over there? Is he reacting to any of these that you have heard?
We'll let him speak for himself.
Any information from any Eastern Oregon detainees from the lawyers that are here?
The cases that I have heard have been primarily on this side of the mountain. I thought I heard of a case in Bend, but I haven't researched it, so I'll have to get back to you.
You also mentioned PPP commander testifying in court that they are witnessing ICE escalating this
That was from the Oregonian article yesterday.
So what is your plan to prevent ICE from being the agitators in these situations where protesters, like you said, 60-year-old women are standing on the corner and they're the ones being attacked by federal officials?
Well, obviously, everything that we've talked about in terms of legislation and requiring them to have identification, if not remove the masks, at least have identification. The concern is, number one, that's not going to pass in this Congress, but we have to keep advocating for these policies to keep everyone safe. We are going to do follow-up with regard to the Federal Protective Agency, because ICE yesterday said that's not us. We're not in charge of that. But we're definitely having follow-up conversations with them so that we can protect the peaceful protesters who are there.
We're going to use
without a doubt.
all our tools. We can use the community networks that we have. We're going to be talking about prevention. We're going to be talking about due process. We're going to be talking about the rule of law. This is a group that's going to be pushing with all our strength and all our energy to keep the peace and to keep our values. We think we're up to it, and part of it, you guys can go on out there and report what my colleagues said. Okay, hold on a sec.
Well, no, I just wanted to say one other thing. The community is also taking action. In North Portland, after Rafael's detention, they have organized for Cesar Chavez's school parent carpools to help get kids safely to and from school. Our community has agency to also be part of the solution here. We're going to need everyone to stand together, and I'm really hoping that folks will maintain peaceful resistance without any escalation, and we'll get video of it and we'll hold them accountable.
Well said. Well, hold on. Before we go, though, we really want our advocates who day in and day out are doing a terrific job actually locking in smart policies that do what you're talking about.
And also tabling it, right. Do you want to talk
I can
about
share
what
a little
you're
bit.
seeing there? Yeah.
Yeah, so beginning in May, when we started hearing that there would be increased detentions happening at the courthouse, that cases would be dismissed, we worked together with some of our legal partners to coordinate a rapid response system with the legal organizations and attorneys who could be on the ground when something happens, and we partnered with the Clear Clinic, which has been the backbone of our Legal Observer program. So in coordination with organizations like the Interfaith Movement for Immigrant Justice and Together Lab, we are working together to have people on the ground in front of both the courthouse and macadam every day to be witnesses to what's happening, to provide resources and information to community members, and to be a presence that is not that which they're experiencing as they have to go through the proceedings. People don't go to that building because it's like a fun place to go. They go because they have to, because they are trying to honor a process that was put before them. And we're there day in and day out to accompany them.
Hi, Lainey Tupper, Clear Clinic. I'm one of the attorneys that has been involved in both managing the Legal Observer program at the Immigration Courthouse in Portland and at the macadam ICE facility. I would also like to shine a light on the importance of our congressional representatives' presence there. We, us at the Clear Clinic and lawyers at Innovation Law Lab, represented by my colleague Isa Pena, have been denied access to counsel at the ICE field office on macadam, I think 8 or 9 times throughout the summer. And after visits from some of our congressional representatives, that quickly stopped. So it does show how important both press coverage and congressional intervention can be in ensuring those due process rights.
Thank you. And if I can just piggyback off of Congresswoman Dexter's, I think there are several things that we as a community can do, and we really urge people that stay informed, that they speak out, and that they support our legal and our community-based organizations in doing this work. You have great resources today here with the PERC hotline and how we're able to get this information and get resources to people. And it's also going to take all of us, right, at all levels of government. We need the elected officials, like the ones that were standing behind with me today, to be courageous, to speak out against the civil rights violations, the human rights violations, and keep record of it all. So we need to reject the efforts to criminalize immigration and protest, and Oregon must remain a place where civil rights and human dignity are protected for all, not just some. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
We encourage you to continue to share in the community the phone number for the PERC hotline. That number is 1-888-622-1510. And people can call if they suspect ICE, if they see something that appears to be ICE activity or a detention happening in their community.
We're going to wrap up now. I just want to make one point that highlights what my colleagues are talking about. We asked Congresswoman Bonamici to set this meeting up for us yesterday because we know that we've got some big challenges ahead. And what we told the folks there at the facility is that we are going to try to be constructive in every way. But we're also not going to sit by and see the rights of law-abiding folks tampered on and stomped on, as Mr. Hernandez's was. And I thought it was a good effort by my colleagues to make a statement in a very difficult time that they want to be on the side of keeping the peace and not having a repeat of what happened during Trump 1.
One more question for Maxine Dexter, please, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. This will be it.
So, as a physician, so as you know, Jeffrey Epstein, the state released a letter purported to be by Mr. Trump with a drawing of a female. So, as a physician, can you speak to whether you can assess the possible age range based on the details in the image of that female?
I won't conjecture, and I would also really find it laughable that Donald Trump would physiologically appropriately draw anything, so I can't guess what the age of that drawing is.
That's a good way to end the day.